Thank you very much, Michael. The globalization of finance and markets has accelerated as we've witnessed the new revolution of high technology businesses. And our next speaker is one of the real pioneering leaders. Robert Galvin is chairman of the executive committee at Motorola, where he's held senior officership positions since 1959, having begun work there in 1940. He's a member of the National Business Hall of Fame. Bob has served also as chairman of the board of trustees of the Illinois Institute of Technology and vice chairman of the Universities Research Association. He's a recipient of over 10 honorary degrees from numerous colleges and universities, and under his leadership, Motorola was the first company-wide winner of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. I should also mention that Bob was another of the founding members of YPO and CEO. And among other groups, he's currently director of Economic Security 2000, which is working to empower all Americans with private retirement accounts to resolve what many of us understand was a looming default of the Social Security system. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Galvin.
Society is a grand and dynamic system. It is grand because of its size and complexity, and it is dynamic because it is ever growing and always changing. A system is made up of subsystems. The subsystems of our society are many: education that trains, military that defends, government that regulates, theology that offers us salvation, and there are many more. And one of those is business. I define business as that honorable subsystem of society that serves the needs of customers and clients at a profit. If you decode that definition, it means that that subsystem of society is the only instrument or agent, the subsystem, that creates wealth. All others are equivalently important, and they are interdependent and complementary, but it is the only one that creates wealth. John Templeton is among the score or fewer of men of the 20th century who have helped to generate and create wealth for the good of society more than all of the rest of us. And he is the inspiration of the theologist. Any one of us would be delighted to hopefully make a mark in one of the subsystem fields. But as that bright Michael Boskin said, John is evident in many. And I particularly herald him for his matching and complementing theology and business, for he is the exponent and the proponent of the honorable conduct. John, we honor you tonight, obviously, because you simply are deserving, and we thank you for that. But there is in this audience tonight 100 or more of those of us who have known you well, and we most appreciate you as a friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. The incredible advances we've witnessed in business and technology are intertwined with an enormous number and type of advances in science, especially since World War II. At the Institute, we work with hundreds of scholars around the world, and we're finding that more and more scholars are asking whether there exist universal natural laws that may actually cross over and perhaps interweave physics, economics, ethics, and so on. Many scientists today, in fact, are exploring whether ethical principles, such as those in Mosaic law, the Golden Rule, and so forth, may be more fundamentally rooted in the cosmos itself, a thought that 20 years ago would have been scoffed at. These are not trivial questions, and they're not trivial people who are considering them, but they're exactly the kind of question that John Templeton has been interested in. Our next speaker is one of the most celebrated men of science of our time. Charles Townes received the Nobel Prize in Physics for his role in the invention of the maser and the laser. He's currently a university professor in the graduate school at the University of California. He received his PhD from Caltech, where he's also a member of the Board of Trustees. And he's been a professor of physics at Columbia, director of research at the Institute for Defense Analysis, and provost at MIT. His list of honorary degrees and awards is so lengthy I can't even begin to list it. So I'm extremely pleased to introduce Charlie Townes.
I am very pleased to be here on this occasion to honor Sir John. Sir John is a scientist. I look at him, well, here is a man who uses resources to make more resources. As an investor, yes, but also in my experience over recent years, I find that he has been investing also his mental and spiritual resources, as well as the financial ones, in ways to improve human life. And he challenged all of us to examine the meaning of life, human values, the nature of our universe, these important and tricky, difficult problems. He is devoutly religious, at the same time completely open, willing to consider many viewpoints, these difficult and important questions that we humans all face. And you undoubtedly know the Templeton Prize has gone to such varied people as Mother Teresa, Paul Davies, a physicist who wrote about science and religion, and so on. Now, Sir John has recognized also some of the strengths of science and what is happening in science. In recent years, science continues to penetrate more and more scientists are recognizing that our universe, as we look at it, how it's constructed, what its origins are, our universe somehow has involved intelligence. We recognize science as an attempt to understand our universe, how it works. Religion is an attempt to understand its meaning, and these two must be closely related. So John has recognized that science has been making great progress, very rapid progress. And religion needs more progress. And so he has stimulated a kind of unity and discussion back and forth between scientists, theologians, getting scientists to think more about religion, and theologians to talk more with scientists, and so on. Seeing the advances in science, can they contribute somehow to our understanding of these still deeper problems on the meaning. Now, this effort is also chancy. These are tough questions. Many of them we tend to avoid. What is the meaning of the universe? What is human consciousness? These are things he has pushed on, encouraged people to study and think about. and helped them, supported them to do it. Forgiveness, the effect of forgiveness both on the forgiver and the forgiven. The effect of prayer on health. He has been willing to take chances and to push things. Just as I suppose as an investor he has done that, and wisely, making difficult choices, but with possible very rewarding results. There has been, in fact, an enormous growth in the interaction between science and religious thought in the last, I would say, decade and a half. And some of it has certainly come from his direction, his stimulation, his support. I suppose many of you have seen the front page of Newsweek a few months ago. On the front page of Newsweek, on the cover, it was a story about scientists and God, a very positive story. Now that's really revolutionary in recent times. It was a result of a conference in Berkeley called with scientists all over the world, many different faiths and some doubters, but first-class, top-notch scientists from many countries, many faiths, to get together and discuss these problems seriously. More and more scientists have been facing these problems, and I think Sir John has had a very powerful influence on this community and on the growth of more discussion in intellectual communities and serious discussion of these tough problems. More than a decade ago, it was difficult for a physicist in an academic environment to say he was religiously oriented. He just didn't do that. Today, I would say, well, scientists are coming out. And we can come out, and we are. And it's made an enormous difference. Sir John has stimulated and encouraged not only with his own books that he has written and edited, but encouraged other kinds of intellectual efforts and thought in this direction, courses in universities, new books written by others, discussions within scientific society, American Association for Advancement of Society, for example, our biggest scientific society, as of all things, recently had meeting on science and religion, its relation, and serious discussions. So I am very thankful for his interest, his efforts, and we can all thank him for his thoughtfulness and his perceptiveness and his leadership in this direction as well as many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. We've been speaking about enormous changes in many fields, and this rapid change, oddly enough, perhaps, seems to be taking place as we discover certain truths in science and technology and business techniques and management and economics and so forth. In other words, it seems that the more we are able to get our sort of intellectual bearing in the world, in this complex world, the greater are we able to propel ourselves into new and more rewarding realms, which seem to be opening almost every day. George Gilder has been a visionary in all these areas. He's president of Gilder Technology Group, senior fellow at the Discovery Institute, and a member of the board of advisors at the Independent Institute. He's the author of numerous highly influential books, including Wealth and Poverty, The Spirit of Enterprise, After Television, Visible Man, Men in Marriage, and the forthcoming Telecosm, which many of us and those in high technology fields have been anxiously awaiting. I'm very glad and pleased to introduce our good friend George Gilder.
Thank you very much. Well, I've had a wonderful experience today. I spent much of it reading, really for the first time, in the works of John Mark Templeton. And I found myself reading excerpts aloud to my wife, Nini, and we both were just carried away by the eloquence and beauty of the views which Templeton expresses. Reading his books and contemplating his work and wealth is like entering a cathedral. You are awed by the radiance of goodness and faith that shines forth. Now, when I wrote Wealth and Poverty, I maintained that the foundation of capitalism is faith, hope, and love. But John Templeton not only says it, he writes about love, for example, as well as anyone since St. Paul, but he also proves it through this miraculous spiral of wealth creation which his funds represent. But I think that this wealth stems from a deeper fund of goodness that is based on a fundamental conviction that God is good, is infinite, and will prevail. And it's that faith which underlies the tremendous optimism which has made it possible for John to build his supreme cathedrals of wealth. Because the value of a nation's goods stems from the goodness of its values. Capitalism is not a Faustian pact where you gain wealth and prosperity in exchange for giving in to greed and avarice. That's the opposite of capitalism. Capitalism is not based on self-interest. Adam Smith was wrong about that. Capitalism is based on love and giving and faith. The core of capitalism, which is at the root of John Templeton's global outreach, is that the good fortune of others is also one's own. You don't see foreign companies as somehow rivals in a Darwinian struggle over a zero-sum game of wealth creation. You see the good fortune of foreign countries, the good fortune overwhelmingly of the poor, as the hope for the future. And if you're an investor like Templeton, you always live in the future. The service of others is the foundation of capitalist goodness, and profit is an index of the altruism of an investment. It represents the difference between the value of the resources to the producer and the value to the consumer, and that difference is an index of the altruism, the service of others, that underlies the investment. Giving, not taking, is the foundation of capitalism. But still more important is John Mark Templeton's belief in that story of the apples, that it is the spiritual calculus that's most important, not the material calculus. Not only in the creation of goodness, but in the creation of goods. That goods are a reflection of goodness, and to the extent that capitalism produces bads, it cannot succeed. And since it demonstrably succeeds, it must stem from the goodness which ultimately comes from the spiritual foundation of God. Templeton defies what I call the materialist superstition, the belief that wealth consists in things. And I believe that this materialist superstition, as Charles Towns has just told you, collapses completely in the science of today. In the last century, early of physics, Newtonian physics was essentially based on the proposition that the foundation of reality were blank, solid bits of matter. Well, early this century, quantum theory overthrew this notion of matter as being ultimately solid, blank bits. The atom turned out to be as empty in proportion to the size of its nucleus as the solar system is empty in proportion to the size of the sun. Quantum theory overthrew the materialist superstition in the foundation of matter itself, in the science of matter itself. Now, I believe in the next century, a similar discovery will arise in biology. It is, at the moment, emerging in biology. Just as the investigation of the microcosm of the atom led to the overthrow of determinist physics, so the discovery of the cell in molecular biology will overthrow the determinist Darwinian scheme in biology. Most of Darwinian theory is based on the proposition that the cell is a so-called lump of protoplasm. But molecular biologists have discovered that the cell, the foundation of all life, is irreducibly complex. It contains thousands of interacting parts that don't function at all unless all are present. And I believe that this, the cell, which molecular biologists are increasingly exploring, indicates intelligent design. And I think John Templeton's life similarly comprises a gilded tapestry of complex parts that bespeaks the presence of a designer for whom he is merely a miraculously humble vessel. Thank you very much.